Jersey on a Monday means that the New Orleans Saints won. Unfortunately, the North Carolina Central Eagles did not come up with the same fate. I have a big takeaway from their loss to Elon and also a breakdown of how it happened. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. It feels good on a Monday after you win. The season's back. I feel real good. But you know what? Since we're opening it up with a loss, I will not rub that in. However, just remember, when the mic cuts off, that does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusions on Twitter or _ Mouth of the South on Instagram, where we will be posting a lot of clips from this here show. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use the code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. Now, today's episode wraps up with a little bit of I don't want to say a rant, but that's what it kind of feels like. I don't think I'm going to rant, but it's a negative conversation, negative monologue about the fact that I've seen enough about the whole FCS versus D2. I'm really ready to lean into it now. Segment 2 is Teasett Time. Out there at Southern, it's Teasett Time. I've seen enough. I have seen enough on that front too for me to know who the starting quarterback of SU should be. But let's kick it off with North Carolina Central versus Elon. I have a couple of takeaways. So there was one aspect that we were really looking forward to, which was how would North Carolina Central respond to Elon's run defense. Response means how would you run against them? And then also how would you pass? Because we knew that Elon had a tough run defense. So that was one side of it. But then a takeaway that I didn't know I was looking for going into the game, but I walked away feeling pleasantly optimistic about. So this is a kind of a split segment of positivity and a little bit of pessimism. But North Carolina Central lost to Elon 41-19. I want to say thank you to HBCU Nightly Josh, because I didn't really want to watch this game back once I saw the score. I was at Southern versus Savannah State, so I wasn't able to catch the game live. But I was really kind of like, I was dragging my feet on watching this game back. And I had some reasons that I couldn't at various times. But the reason I was excited is because I was listening to HBCU Nightly on Sunday night, and he mentioned a sequence. That's what it was. It was a sequence of events where everything turned around. So I kind of wanted to see it. I saw the box score and I saw everything. Like, I was like, this doesn't feel like a game I'd be excited to look back at, even though I knew I was going to have to do it. But I would say it was easier to get through because I was waiting for this sequence. And when that sequence of events happened, I saw exactly what Josh was saying. And it was 24-13. It finally felt as if North Carolina Central was coming back, right? Because they got out to a 24-0 lead. 24-0 deficit. So you're trying to play comeback, trying to catch up this whole time. And it felt as if you were on the way. It felt like you were almost there. Things started to turn around, specifically on the defense, and that's one of the takeaways that we'll look at. And then you have an interception that is called back. And that interception would have given you the ball, I believe, in plus territory. It was definitely near the midfield. I think it was between the 40s, but I felt like it was in plus territory just off my memory. But he gets called back on. I didn't think it was a roughing the passer, but that's what it was called, right? So that was really the sequence that stonewalled them. I won't say changed it, because you did get out to a 24-0 deficit. And that's a big deal. That's already a hard thing to come back from. And even if you get that interception, maybe it doesn't happen. That's a 3-score lead if you get 3 2-point conversions. So really, let's call it a 4-point or 4-score lead in all actuality. So that was a very tough one. But that sequence really stonewalled any momentum. Any momentum that North Carolina Central had was done after that, in my opinion. because Elon went on to kick a field goal on that drive, and now you're back up 14 points, and it was 24 or 27-13, and things were just different. I think the pick six came right after that. Everything turned around at that moment, in my opinion. But let's get into the first part of what I was looking forward to going into the game. How would they respond to North Carolina? Excuse me, to Elon's run defense, and I thought they did a mixed bag job. Right, you had a big rush touchdown, an 80-yard touchdown. You had a big run by Jamari Taylor at one point. He ended up leaving the game with 14 for 54 and a touchdown. Not leaving the game. That sounds like he got injured. I just mean walking away, finishing the game. With 14 for 54 and one touchdown. So it wasn't a great day by him. It was not. You're looking at a little bit under 4 yards per carry. You're not happy with that. So that's not surprising to me. Elon did a phenomenal job stopping Duke, right? Like when you're just looking at going against an FBS competition, they did a really good job stopping Duke from running the ball. So them stopping Central from running the ball isn't surprising. It was almost expected, in my opinion. I would have been very excited if that didn't happen, right? But this is not a surprise to me. I expected this. So now what does Walker Harris do? I thought he had a much more efficient day, pure passing. If you take out everything, like just throwing the amount of attempts and the amount of passes didn't touch the ground. I thought he did a decent job with that. He went 16 for 24. It was only 181 yards. They did attack the boundaries a little bit more, which was another thing that I was looking forward to. But here's where it got tricky. He had 3 interceptions, and 2 of them were really bad. I think the third one was bad too, but when you look at where the game was, that was a risk that he kind of had to take. Because it's like, all right, we just I'm trying to come back at any means, by any means necessary. So I think that was a little bit different, even though it was an ugly looking pick. It was a double coverage. It wasn't a good pass. But the first 2 across the middle, it was terrible. And one was returned for a touchdown. That was not good. If I can get Walker Harris to mix in the safety that he played with in week 1 with the efficiency of attempts and completions in week 2, we may be having a different conversation. And I don't think that it gets too much better for him next week because they're going against North Carolina. So like it's a tough way to start the season. You're just hoping that these reps end up getting better. You're hoping that he makes better decisions. I just thought that those first 2 interceptions, both caught across the middle, both right there on the seams, it was bad. I didn't like those plays, right? And you got to cut those out. You got to make better reads in that, because it didn't seem like it was a fantastic play. It looked as if, and remember with the broadcast copy, you can't see, it's not all 22, but it didn't look as if that linebacker or that defender moved too much. He was just kind of right there. It just looked like a bad decision over everything else. So I would say that they did not pass the test of passing the ball to win, but they did attack the perimeter. I did see some better things from the passing game. It's just about balance, man. It sucks because you check off one box, but then another one pops up. It's like, dang, I was struggling here. I improved, but now I have another place to improve in. And you wish it was just a wholesale, just, okay, he looked better, but now it's just a different struggle. And then lastly, physicality. That physicality, I think in that early to mid third quarter into the fourth, you saw North Carolina Central get physical with Elon. And that wasn't something you saw in the first 30 minutes of action. And that was actually the biggest takeaway. Positive or negative, I felt as if North Carolina Central's physicality was the biggest takeaway of the game versus Elon, because I was able to see, all right, that's who they're going to be. That's their identity. We saw it against Alabama State. They just out-physicaled Alabama State in the trenches repeatedly, over and over and over, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. They was tearing up that Hornet offensive line. Now, as the game progressed against Elon, you saw the North Carolina Central defensive line do the same thing here. You saw the linebackers get downhill. You saw them start getting into the backfield. There was a play specifically, right, with Ryan Wynn, where it was 3 down linemen. It was a run play by Elon, and he beat his offensive lineman, right, with a 3-man rush. You got a tackle for a loss, a tackle for no gain. That was a really good play by Ryan Wynn. And I think it was a perfect example of how in that third to fourth quarter, North Carolina Central's physicality ratcheted up. Now I can say, as we go through more games throughout the season, I expect them to be a physical team. I expect that to be a trademark of that squad, specifically in the front 7. You saw some of that in the offensive line as well, but it wasn't abundant. But on the defensive line, you saw what they were able to do on a repeated basis. I like what I saw in that third to fourth quarter. I do believe confidently I can say, if you come to play North Carolina Central, you have to be ready to be punched in the mouth. You have to be ready to be punched in the mouth by that defense because that's the way that they're going to play. So as we push forward, we looked at the two biggest takeaways. One we were going into the game looking for, one we walked away with that we didn't know that we would find. Now let's look at Southern, because I got a big takeaway here. And it's that I don't want to see Noah Bowden on the field again unless there's an injury, knock on wood, unless there's an injury, knock on wood, or if it's time to run out the clock, because they clearly have the starting quarterback that they need at Southern. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. And for 20 years, that's 2 decades and counting. For over 20 years, people have been leaning on 5 Hour Energy to get through some of the rough days. They have a multitude of flavors. You've all seen them, right? Because you can catch them at the convenience store. You can catch them at the grocery store, right there by the cash register. You've seen them. Just go ahead and get you one. About the size of this right here, right? That's about it. Pause. But like, you're looking at one quick shot, take it. You got it. And it's over. And now you get through the rest of your day smoothly. The next 5 hours is no more lethargic movements. There's no more groaning and moaning. It's like, man, I'm ready to go attack the rest of the day. If you want to feel like that, if you just want to feel like effortlessly getting through that back half of your day or effortlessly getting through this presentation or this preparation or whatever it may be, maybe you just got a long night that you got to stay up. You want to go somewhere that night. Doesn't matter. If you want to make sure you're doing that, go ahead and get yourself a 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use the code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your first order. And it's an offer that is valid until September 30th. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, go check out Locked On Saints. My guy Ross Jackson has some good things to say. All right, it was a pretty good win for my squad. I'm going to go ahead and shout them out. Check out Locked On Saints with Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson NOLA. Now, that being said, I want to keep it in Louisiana. Matter of fact, that was a perfect segue. Let's keep it in Louisiana. Move up the road from the 504 to the 225. I was in Baton Rouge this weekend with HBCU Go doing something with their broadcast. I wasn't on air, unfortunately, one day, but, I was with the broadcast. So I was able to watch the Southern and Savannah State game with a very front row seat up from the press box. So let's spend the back 2/3 of this show speaking about Southern versus Savannah State. And it's time to put the Bowden experiment to bed. It's Zae Teasett time. It's tea time. Let's say Teasett time. Don't tease it. Time to give him. How shall we do it? Zae Teasett. Teasett time, like tea time, or no more time to tease it. Let's roll with Zae. The time to tease it is over. It's Zae season. I don't know. Anyway, we workshopping. That was live. Tea time was. I did that already though. Tea time, Teasett time. I was already there. But listen, man. I've never believed that Noah Bowden had a strong grip on this job. And now that I've watched him be replaced for 2 games, and I was able to watch him get replaced in his last game full time, really, I think it's clear. I saw it. It's time for him to ungrip. It's time for him to let go of this job completely. He might have to pry his hands off. But to me, Zae Teasett was significantly better in this game. And if I bench a quarterback twice and this guy looks significantly better, take out who they're playing. If Zae Teasett looks way better than Noah Bowden, and this is the second time that Bowden has been sat down for Teasett, let's just roll with Teasett. Let's just roll with Teasett and let's just let him take his bumps. He's a redshirt freshman. And that's the thing. Noah Bowden had this job because he had experience. But it was the funniest thing to me. He was the only guy, the only quarterback on this roster in the spring that threw a pass. But he's not experienced. I heard he has the experience edge. If that's all Noah Bowden has, there was no Kung Fu grip on this. It did not happen. It did not exist, I should say. Because if a guy who started, 2 games? I think he's thrown, if you total up all his passes, he has maybe 2 games worth of passes. He's more experienced comparatively than the other guys, but to call him experienced would be a stretch. Almost feels like it would be a lie. So I never really felt like he had a strong grip on that job. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm totally surprised by this. I'm not. Like, I'm not overly surprised that somebody else's came in. But it always sounded close. It always sounded close to me. But where were we at? Yes. For the second time, Zae Teasett just came in. I think it's time to roll with him and let him take his bumps because he is a redshirt freshman. He hasn't had any experience until these first 2 games. Heck, if you look at career passes, they may be close now. But let me move on. Let me move on from that talking point. Zae Teasett has never started a game. If he were to start this week, it's against Jackson State. I expect him to take his bumps against Jackson State. I do. If he comes out and lights up Jackson State, I'm going to have a different conversation. Yeah, I don't care what happens. If Zae Teasett comes out and has a good game against Jackson State, win or lose, we're talking about Zae Teasett on Monday. That's a fact. So but I expect him to take his bumps. His first start gets a really good defense. It's going to be tough. But what you can't do is go herky-jerky. And I see this with coaches who have quarterback battles that either go down to the absolute wire or go into the regular season. First off, I will never like when you play 2 quarterbacks. I will never be a fan of it. If you play 2 healthy quarterbacks, no bueno in my mind, right? But when you go into the regular season with a quarterback battle ongoing, I notice that coaches operate with no leash for at least the first 6-7 games of the year. Right? Like, let's say Noah Bowden didn't look good against Savannah State. He just didn't. The offense didn't flow. When Zae Teasett got in, the offense flowed. It did. They hit a stride. And I think that matters. There was a note because I always talk about D2 opponents this, D2 opponents that. But I saw how you looked against the same opponent in the same game on the same night with hours between each other. Not even. I saw the difference in the offense. It flowed better with Zae Teasett. He just made better decisions. Like they kept doing crossing routes that were shallow, and he just took them. It makes me want to go back and look to see. Like, I think Bowden might have missed his first. Did Bowden ever throw a completion? I think it took him eight attempts to throw a completion. He threw an interception for a completion. I know that. Zae Teasett came into this game. He threw a deep shot. He took what was there. Things just moved easy. I don't know if it was fatigue. I don't know what it was. But what I can say is when you saw him at the helm, it looked as if Southern's offense had a spark. You got to let him continue that because being a redshirt freshman, he's going to struggle at times. And if you take him out as soon as he struggles, you're not really allowing him to improve. You're not allowing him to gain experience. And that's what I was saying about coaches. Excuse me. That's what I was saying about coaches. Coaches tend to do this herky-jerky thing where QB A starts the season. QB B lost the battle closely. They just go A, B, A, B, A, B. It's like they're Ben Roethlisberger on the coaching staff, and all they see A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Like that. That's what it feels like. Don't do that. You've shifted to B. Allow Teasett, a redshirt freshman, to improve on the job. Allow him to throw his interceptions. Now, if it reaches a point where it's extreme, then we can have a different conversation. But if it doesn't, you got to let it get there. You got to he's young. He could be the quarterback of the future. You got to let him get experience, though. And taking him out when he makes a couple of mistakes is not gaining experience. I think it's actually teaching really bad habits. It's teaching bad responses, or it's correlating bad responses to things. He's going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. I just seen Walker Harris threw 3 interceptions. I can guarantee they're still rocking with him at Central. You got to do the same with your guy. Now, as you push forward, we're going to keep it in the same conversation and it's going to be brief, I think. And this is kind of the rant I referenced. I don't have any desire to see FCS HBCUs, FCS teams, but this is Locked On HBCU, facing any D2 squads. And that includes D2 HBCUs. Let's break that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibata, and I understand you may not be going on vacation. You may not be sitting here planning to go out to Florida or go to Hawaii or go to California, or maybe it's getting colder. You want to go skiing and whatnot. You ain't ready to go to Colorado or New York. You may not be planning that, but I'm sure you're getting groceries. I'm sure that you're looking to eat. And listen, I bought a gallon of orange juice the other day. A gallon of orange juice don't cost what it used to cost. It don't. But with Ibata, luckily I get money back. It doesn't matter if I'm at the grocery store. It doesn't matter if I'm getting clothes. If it's I'm at a Macy's or I'm getting some electronic for the podcast and I'm at Best Buy. It doesn't matter where I am. They have 1,000 and 1,000 plus thousands of retailers that you can use Ibata and you can get money back. So that gallon of orange juice that ain't what it used to be is a little bit closer with Ibata. So right now they're offering they're offering listeners $5 for just trying Ibata by using the code Locked On College. So use the code Locked On College after you download this at the App Store, IBOTTA at the Google Play or App Store, and use the code Locked On College to get $5 back. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Did I show you my jersey? I'm acting a fool because doggone it, when you win like that, I think you get to do what you want to do. So allow me to enjoy my victory. Oh, I just thought about it. North Carolina Central. It's in North Carolina, just like the Carolina Panthers. I hope nobody turned me off after my intro. Love you though. We're keeping it Central, keeping it in North Carolina, keeping it in Baton Rouge, keeping it in New Orleans. The Saints better not be bad after this because I'm going on a little victory lap. But that being said, I'm done with it. And I'm also done with, I have no desire. I was already there, but I have zero desire to see any FCS school go against a D2 team. Doesn't mean I won't accept it. Don't mean I won't make exceptions. But desiring it and looking forward to it and clamoring, I would never clamor for it. But if TSU plays a D2 squad, I'm never like, now unless it's homecoming. Homecoming is different examples. Because now we just looking like, okay, I just want an easy win for homecoming. Cool with that. I'm all right with that. I ain't gonna lie to you. That comes from years of TSU not being worth $1. So like I'm cool. I've been there. Losing homecoming sucks. But under normal circumstances, I'm not looking forward to any of the D2 squads playing against FCS opponents. I don't care if it's HBCU versus HBCU. Exceptions that I will make if it is a rivalry. If it is a rivalry, I am okay. Tradition trumps my feelings. But what is Southern doing playing Savannah State? Anybody got an answer for that? Is Savannah State all of a sudden in New Orleans? Alexandria? My Blues is like close to Grambling. Last time I checked, that's in Georgia. There's no geographical connection. Is there a rivalry that I don't know about? Very well could be the case. I learn more and more about HBCU rivalries as I do this show. It's one of the things I'm thankful for. But I don't see the connection. And in these type of games, I don't want to see this. Look, I told you, Union versus Hampton. I was kind of like, yeah, get the popcorn ready. I want to watch this game. And it was a good game. It was close. But if this D2 is not Benedict, it's not. Let me not do that. Let me not even go through teams. But basically, I was going to go name off playoff teams from last year. If you're not a playoff squad, I don't want to play you. Or if there's rivalries, you got to be a high-level D2 team for me to be okay with this, for me to be excited about it. Otherwise, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. Matt, but I'll say this. You better go out there and you better do it. Because Savannah State got smashed late in that game. But in the early parts, it was a game. Southern offense couldn't do anything. The part of that was because they had the bad quarterback in. The wrong quarterback in. Excuse me, I don't call him bad, but the wrong quarterback in. I think when Teasett came in, I think offense picked up pretty quickly, but I think it may have took him a couple of drives as well. Maybe. But I know when Bowden was in, it was bad. Couldn't score a touchdown. Southern did not create a lot of excitement in me. That offensive line, I think, is skeptical. I was able to sit there and watch and take away some things because he was getting beat down by Savannah State's linebacking core. What about when Taylor, Pulliam come in? 30-7. Them some boys out there at Jackson State. 30-7 on some boys out there at Jackson State at linebacker. And if Southern was struggling early in the game with Savannah State's linebackers, what you gonna do when Jackson come around? That's this week. It's the game of the week. That's this week. We will be breaking that down. Trust me, that will be one of the matchups. These are questions that need to be answered. So I'm not sitting here saying you can't take any takeaways, but I would have rather not seen that. I'm sitting up there. Look, I already getting old, and I'm already like I be getting tired these days. I ain't gonna lie. I be getting tired sometimes. I be getting tired sometimes, but like I'm still up there like, okay, can we get this over with? Because it reached the point where I knew where it would be. It was my expectation. And I say this with full understanding that these upsets happen. Like I'm not gonna say that they're common, but they're definitely not rare. So this is not to say a D2 team can't beat an FCS HBCU. I don't. Most of the time that I see it, it's a rivalry game. I'm already okay with that. But I don't know, man. I'm not excited for it. It doesn't make me want to go watch. It makes me want to sit here and just, okay, I'll watch it, I guess. Now, next time I go, if it's a D2 versus D2, that's a different conversation. This is not to put down D2 teams, but I really don't want to watch FCS versus FBS competition. Different subdivisions are not exciting unless you are at the top of that subdivision going up. I don't care. It's not entertainment. It doesn't create intrigue. Ain't for me. Now, Russell Haynes, who asked during our Friday live stream, asked should a D2 HBCU get money the way a D1 HBCU does when they play FBS competition? I say no, because the disadvantage paying money to somebody for them to play, it doesn't fit for me. I don't think that HBCUs on the FCS level have the funds to shill out money to play for somebody to come to them. I get what you're saying. I understand different subdivisions. I can't argue that from a competition standpoint, but monetary, it just doesn't. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it makes sense financially for that to happen. I think you would see the end of D2 teams going up to the FCS subdivision to play a game if they started saying, oh, yeah, it's a money game now. My opinion. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about one of these FCS versus D2 HBCU games, Alabama State versus Miles. But it's not really about that game in particular. It's about Alabama State. Are they still championship contenders with Andrew Body leaving? And we're going to break down the Alabama State side of the Body situation. So let's get into all of that on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, in between time, till next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.